Of all the components that make up America's most recognizable rifle, the one that generated the most fierce debate is a spring-loaded plunger on the right side of the receiver. It cost exactly $4.50. In November 1963, the military placed a massive $13.5 million order for 104,000 of these rifles. But that single contract created two completely different versions of the exact same weapon on the exact same day. Eugene Stoner, the man who designed the rifle, argued heavily against adding the plunger. Colt's engineers advised against it. The Air Force tested it and concluded it added unnecessary cost without any practical benefit. But the Army insisted. Their ordnance officers were dealing with a generation of soldiers trained on the M1 Garand. Those older weapons were built with heavy, exposed operating rods. If a round failed to seat properly, a soldier could physically force the mechanism forward with the heel of their hand. Army doctrine required physical feedback. The Army got in way. That small mechanical addition proved that once the military adopted Stoner's architecture, the platform no longer belonged strictly to the designer. It belonged to the institution, and the institution would physically alter the aluminum to enforce its own doctrines. Stoner's M16 operated on a completely different logic. It utilized an internal gas system that acts directly inside the bolt carrier itself. There is no external rod and no heavy linkage transferring energy. The mechanism is entirely internal. Stoner's argument was that if a cartridge fails to chamber, you eject it. A round that is manually shoved into a fouled chamber using a forward assist is highly likely to stick during extraction. You solve an immediate failure to feed by creating a severe failure to extract. The military solved the dispute by splitting the inventory. The Air Force took 19,000 rifles with smooth bolt carriers and no assist. The Army took 85,000 rifles equipped with the plunger, requiring custom notches to be milled directly into the side of the bolt carrier so the device had something to push against. That $4.50 compromise seems like a minor bureaucratic footnote, yet it established a mechanical precedent. The forward assist proved the military was willing to alter the receiver to match their assumptions about how warfare should be conducted. Over the next 3 decades, those alterations would become far more extreme. By the mid-1960s, a geographic reality forced the first major geometrical shift. The standard M16 measured almost 39 inches long. That length was an absolute liability for soldiers packed into transport helicopters or pushing through dense, claustrophobic vegetation. Colt's immediate solution was simple subtraction. They chopped the barrel down to roughly 10 inches, creating the highly compact XM177 series. But altering the geometry created severe ballistic consequences. Firing a standard 5.56 cartridge out of a 10-inch barrel produces a shockwave that disorients the shooter, while the unburned powder erupts into a blinding fireball capable of destroying a soldier's night vision in a single trigger pull. To manage the violent blast, Colt extended the barrel slightly to 11.5 inches and engineered a specialized sound moderator. That exact compromise, balancing physical compactness against ballistic efficiency, laid the foundation for the M4 carbine that eventually became standard issue. In the 1970s, the Army faced a completely different environmental problem. Armored vehicle design called for mechanized infantry to lay down suppressive fire through tiny firing ports in the hull of the M2 Bradley, all while the vehicle was moving. A standard rifle was useless in that confined metal box, so Rock Island Arsenal produced the M231. They took the receiver and converted it to an open bolt system to prevent overheating. They accelerated the rate of fire to roughly 1,200 rounds per minute, and they entirely removed the stock and the sights. The M231 proved that the original receiver could abandon every conventional feature of a precision infantry rifle, including the ability to aim, and still function flawlessly as an answer to a highly specific combat environment. While the Army worked on armor, the Navy needed the platform to survive water. Navy SEALs operating in tropical environments faced intense saltwater corrosion and required a rifle capable of withstanding sustained deep water submersion without failing. The resulting MK4 Mod 0 utilized specialized chemical coatings, but its most vital feature was mechanical. Engineers deliberately drilled a 1/4-inch hole directly into the rear buffer tube. That hole exists because the weapon was explicitly designed to flood completely at depths of 200 feet. The moment an operator broke the surface, the rifle needed rapid mechanical drainage to clear the operating system before the first trigger pull. By the late 1990s, the Navy faced another severe spatial constraint. Boarding parties and special operators found that even the shortened M4 carbine caught on ship hatches, tight stairwells, and narrow passageways. Naval Surface Warfare Center Crane solved this by developing the Close Quarters Battle Receiver, or CQBR. They paired heavily shortened 10.3-inch barrels with recycled M16A1 lower receivers sitting in the naval inventory, creating the MK18. The MK18 was the direct result of 30 years of accumulated institutional knowledge. The struggles of the XM177 taught them how short a gas system could realistically go, and the MK4's maritime operations taught them how to successfully suppress it. In the 1980s, the Army needed a strict doctrinal decision based on combat data, leading to a variant called the M16A3, a rifle that goes almost completely unmentioned in most official histories. This chart shows the exact logic the Army applied. Field reports proved that full automatic fire rapidly depleted a soldier's ammunition without actually yielding a higher rate of effective hits. Consequently, the Army deleted the full auto capability on the incoming M16A2, mandating a restricted 3-round burst setting. The Navy analyzed that exact same weapon and arrived at the exact opposite conclusion. A 3-round burst makes sense for infantry advancing across an open field. It is a severe liability for a SEAL team caught in a confined ambush or a maritime boarding operation, where sheer volume of fire is required to survive the initial contact. Because their operational reality demanded it, the Navy commissioned the M16A3. Functionally, it is an M16A2 in every physical aspect, except for one. The Navy deliberately restored the full automatic trigger group the Army had just erased. It is an exact inversion of the argument over the forward assist in 1963. Decades after the Army forced a modification over the objections of the Air Force and the designer, the Navy quietly utilized their own procurement contracts to overrule the Army's trigger doctrine. Stoner's lightweight aluminum architecture succeeded precisely because it was a blank canvas. It allowed entirely different branches to look at the same design, reach completely contradictory conclusions, and somehow both be right.